What up? It's episode 178 of the Guardian Project podcast, and I'm just a thought vessel, Andy.
Oh, I like that. And I am your opponent whose life total is greater than the number of people on the planet, Mike Coyle.
8 billion?
Yeah, there's over 8 billion people on the planet now.
I know, that happened this week.
It did.
It's a lot of babies.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily mean I'm winning the game. I just have that much life.
Commander damage beats 8 billion life.
Bring it on. I'll lose to it.
Please listen carefully.
And this is the podcast about Commander,
our favorite Magic the Gathering format. And today we're going to talk about the Transformers cards because they got printed in Brothers War. A lot of people maybe didn't want to read them.
Skipped them, missed them.
A lot of words on two sides of the card on every single one of these cards.
We'll read it so you don't have to.
That's right. So this is like a book on tape, but also we're going to give our opinions about them and talk about how good they are.
Yeah, and there's a lot of chapters because there's so much text on these Transformers.
A lot.
But before we start, we got an email from Quinn, Girldick Energy on Twitter, who followed the instructions. And their email says, I followed the instructions and provided photographic evidence of having melded something other than Brazella. So we talked about meld cards.
Okay.
And so there's Brazella and Gisela and Bruna from the Shadows block. And then there was also Onweir Garrison and it's the Onweir. It's the one that turns into the township.
Right.
And that got melded. And no one still to this day, this is a fact, forever, knows the name of the other, third meld pair.
So and you can't prove us wrong.
Faye said, in this case specifically, it was the Writhing Township. I play both halves of my Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker deck because the body makes more bodies, and having copies really starts to snowball out of control. Bonus points if we have Perforos out on the field. The land giving haste also made it really just an easy add. So Faye said, I've included the image of the melding event as well as a link to the original tweet. So, I mean, this is thorough homework.
Yes.
So Onweir, the Writhing Township is a 7/4 Eldrazi ooze that has trample and haste. And it says whenever it attacks, you put 2 3/2 colorless Eldrazi horrors onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking.
It's really good.
The whole city was like, let's go.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing got up.
And every time they turn sideways, they produce 6 power worth of Eldrazi horror.
A little ooze falls out.
2 of them.
2 oozes
2 Eldrazi
fall out of the big ooze.
Yeah,
I mean, they're not, the little ones aren't ooze, but okay. So let's look at this board state for real though. Tell me if this is good. Okay. Spoiler alert.
Visualizing.
It's good.
Probably good.
So Perforos, God of the Forge.
It's good.
When a creature enters, you 2 damage to each of your opponents. Legion Loyalist, which is a 1/1 haste battalion, and your creatures gain first strike and trample.
Yep.
2 1/1 elementals.
Oh, you got battalion. Okay.
Seasoned Pyromancer. Jahzzar the Troublemaker. A Ruby Battalion and 5 mountains.
Is there any indication that Jahzzar has haste? Is Jahzzar tapped?
It is not tapped, and there is no way to say whether or not it doesn't have summoning symbols. I mean, but you do need 1 red mana, and it can't be activated right now. It can also only be activated at sorcery speed.
And you have to discard a card.
And you do have to you discard a card. Yeah. And I'm not sure if there's a hand here, but honestly, this is a legit board state.
Yeah,
so
that's really strong.
If you play the third meld pair that no one, and it doesn't exist, no one knows the name of.
You don't know it.
You don't know it, but if you figure it out and you've melded it and you have proof of it, photographic evidence, send it to us. Yeah, and we'll talk about that on another episode. Thank you, Quinn.
That way we can gaslight you and tell you that that photograph is fake and doctored. And everything. If you weren't aware, there's this social media website called Twitter that might be on fire right now. But there's good news because our friends over at Moxfield have put together some conceptual art about a potential social media website just for Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, it looks like a full social media website that is just built into Moxfield. So if you're not using Moxfield, we're not sponsored. Really, really great content. That they have really easy to use, like a really easy to use website where all of my decks now are.
And build decks there.
Yeah.
Not just import
the decks, but also like in the image that they showed, it looks like there's going to be like recent articles or top decks. Top decks is in like the most popular decks, not necessarily top decks. Maybe that'd be a cool series, like top decks.
Top decks.
And you just you reveal a card. Is this good? Did we want it in this situation? Kind of cool.
Okay.
But yeah, with Twitter being how it is, although this week we did find out that their current CEO is talking about stepping down and finding a new person to take over as CEO. Perfect. It only took like 20 days to break them. It was pretty crazy with we had a blue check mark. We don't have a blue check mark. We have verify. We don't have like the whole thing just, we live and die by Twitter, honestly, for the podcast. We just hang out. That's where we met all of our Magic friends. That's where we know people. So we don't know if Twitter's going to be around. Who knows? This is not a doomsday comment either. It's just, I literally have no idea, but it's true. People are pulling ad sponsorships. Yes. That's not great for the website. So if you're not using Moxfield yet, use it.
Yeah, you should get on there
because then when the website introduces social media, you're already there. You've got followers. You're already actively using it. Yeah. It'll be really great.
Like if your Twitter account currently has like a small string of numbers at the end, get into Moxfield now. Get your username without the numbers. It'll be perfect. You'll be the first.
Moxfield user just Andy.
Oh yeah, you could do. Probably it's already taken.
I'm sure,
but not. Oh, maybe like, maybe I'm making another account.
Maybe I gotta get. Maybe I gotta get in there with the Andrew.
But if you are looking for an alternate way to get a hold of us and stuff, we also do have a Discord. You can find it on our pinned tweet on our Twitter account.
Yeah, for as long as Twitter exists, that is our pinned tweet. It's just come hang out with us. We wanted to make sure that folks saw that because if Twitter did disappear, I don't know how to find all of you other than you emailing us, unless you're already in our Discord.
Right.
Or if you're a patron, we have a way to reach all of our patrons, and this is a good time to thank everybody who listens to our show every single week, and especially our patrons. We really do appreciate everything that you do for us, and everybody who reaches out and consumes our content. We're really glad you're here. And if you want to find or if you want to support us in a different way, you can head to patreon.com/guardianprojectpod and donate for any dollar amount.
And if you want to support us in a different way or in an additional way, whatever you are enjoying the podcast on now, if you could subscribe, rate, review, leave some comments, some hearts, whatever it is you can, we'd really appreciate it. But you can also find us online on YouTube, Instagram, still find us on Twitter. You can search the Guardian Project Podcast over on Google, and you can email us at guardianprojectpod@gmail.com.
Still no Facebook. We could go back to MySpace. Is that a thing still? Is MySpace still a thing?
I'm sure it is. And for a long time, MySpace was actually being used for like music content
If you want to be in our top 8 friends on MySpace, send us a direct message.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll set one up.
A 500-word
essay. An essay? They're not applying for college.
They're applying for our top 8 friend positions.
That's important. Very important. Well, this week we've got planes, no trains, and automobiles. So let's get to it. Transformers.
Yes, they finally rolled out these cards.
They might be more than meets the eye.
Good.
I never watched this show. I've only seen some of the movies, not all of them.
The shows are better.
Oh, the show's better? Okay.
At me in the comments.
So most of these cards are creature cards and a vehicle on the other side. 2 of them are not vehicles. They each have an ability called More Than Meets the Eye, where you can cast it onto the vehicle or the object side instead of the robot side. And both sides have criteria to flip the cards back and forth. The vehicles, if there's a vehicle, has an ability called Living Metal. So it means that they're a creature as long as it's your turn, and you don't have to crew these cards.
That's true.
These vehicles, no crewing.
In fact, you can't crew them without jumping through another hoop of giving them a crew cost.
Could you put somebody in the driver's seat on these vehicles?
So
I think so.
Yeah, the brand new Boros Dominaria United Commander makes vehicles you control have crew 1. And then the Shurikai, not Shurikai, but the other commander
Katori
gives, I think, things crew 2.
No, I meant in the show. Could a person get into them? I think so.
Yeah, they do. They because like even like Bumblebee like helps people by
by driving them.
Yeah.
Okay. So
no, you don't want to be inside them when they transform.
Okay, yeah, you don't have to drive them. They can drive themselves.
That's
okay,
true.
Self-driving vehicles. So we're going to go through each of these. We're going to talk about which ones are hot, which ones are not, where we play them, maybe where they fit into the 99. And we're going to start with Prowl Stoic Strategist, a 3/3 robot for 3 and a white. It has More Than Meets the Eye for 2 and a white, so this one costs 1 less. It says whenever Prowl attacks, exile up to 1 other target tapped creature or vehicle. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner owner may play it. So we've seen something like this before on some other cards. And then it says whenever a player plays a card exiled with Prowl, you draw a card and you convert Prowl. On the other side, we have a 2/3 vehicle. It's a police cruiser, and it says whenever another creature or a vehicle enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Prowl. If this is the second time this ability has resolved, you convert Prowl. So I don't know. This one has the 4 mana cost with no immediate payoff if you actually play this on the robot side. I feel like most of these, when we go through them, I'd probably play on the vehicle side because I like them just coming out sooner. They're not all cheaper, but most of them are. It also requires you to attack on the robot side to really get any of that value. And the vehicle side's okay, but I don't really I think I'd want to always stay on the robot side. I don't know if I want to come back from the vehicle side. I don't think this is going to see any play in a commander or vehicle deck that I play. And I'm not sure this is the best vehicle to go into even Shorokai vehicles. I don't know if I want this one. I'd rather play the other white one we'll talk about. There's some blue ones and a blue white. I just don't really, I think there's a lot of other stronger vehicle decks, cards for vehicle decks.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think there might be a case. I mean, when you look at it, it's maybe reminiscent of a flicker type of deck or a blink type of deck, but you have to cast the card if it's your own card that you're doing it. Sure, you can remove your stuff. You're probably going to be removing your opponent's commanders with this. I think we talked about that once, because we were talking about whether or not your opponents would put the commander in the command zone when you exile it with an effect like this.
I guess if they have, well, I don't know if it goes to exile forever. Well, I mean, they probably would. I bet they would, because it goes to exile. It makes it cost less. They don't have the extra commander tax, and
you're giving your opponent a card draw, but you're also converting them into the vehicle in case you don't want them to have the robot anymore.
I guess that's true. I wonder if when this leaves, they have, now it's in exile forever. It says for as long as it remains exiled, its owner may, even if Prowl leaves, that remains. So they're going to probably throw it into exile. I don't know.
I still don't think it's worth playing in many places. I have a flicker deck. I wouldn't want to play it in that flicker deck. No.
Prowl is not one that I think I'm going to be using.
No. But we have another mono white transformer here that I think does fit in a few of our decks, or at least it appeals to us more, and that's Ratchet Field Medic. For 2 and a white, you get a 2/4 robot with more than meets the eye for 1 and a white, so 1 generic less. This 2/4 has lifelink, and whenever you gain life, you may convert Ratchet. When you do, return target artifact card with mana value less than or equal to the amount of life you gained this turn from your graveyard to the battlefield, tapped. And on the vehicle side, we have Ratchet Rescue Racer, a 1/4 vehicle with living metal and lifelink. This is whenever 1 or more non-token artifacts you control are put into a graveyard from the battlefield, convert Ratchet. This ability triggers only once each turn. So although you can have the robot side out twice per turn, you'll only be able to convert from the vehicle side to the robot side once per turn. But you still be able to return two artifacts per turn this way. If you're using the Ratchet robot side with 2 lifelink, you'll be able to return mana value 2 artifacts back to the battlefield and keep looping them. I know there's a lot of artifacts that care about enter the battlefield. You get to draw a card, you can pay generic mana and sacrifice them to get some sort of extra special effect. Alchemist Vial comes to mind to make it so creatures can't block, or you have an unblockable creature. Sleeper Dart is another one that can tap and sacrifice. The artifacts do come in tapped, so Sleeper Dart might not work as well, but there's a lot of instances. Aether Spell Bombs, those type of artifacts would work really well here.
Yeah, I think this one is a better mono white transformer card. It works really well with just generic life gain, which is great because that's just in a lot of decks. And I do like the ambulance side. So this is an ambulance. It's
ambulance.
I don't know what it looks like. A van. It doesn't.
Yeah, big van, very square.
It is. It looks like the vehicle from the Ghostbusters. I feel
vehicle?
Like that's
that.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time. Yeah, I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but I feel like this is the shape. Or this is like the Mystery Machine, but the wheel's not on the front. The wheel.
Yes, and this is white.
And it's not psychedelic painted. Yes, I mean, it's definitely an ambulance. It definitely should be identified. I mean, they want you to know. No, so I think that you don't have to do a whole lot for this to be good in certain decks, like a Layla. I think a Layla's cool. It just cares about casting artifacts or enchantments. This one just works, and there's some generic life gain there. I even like seeing this in the 99 maybe of a Sidri Galvanic Genius deck. So you can turn non-creature artifacts into artifact creatures, and since they are only creatures on your turn with the living metal, at least the vehicle side, you could do that. And then since you care about getting artifacts back from your graveyard, you're turning low mana cost artifacts into creatures with death touch with Sidri. You don't care that they die, and then Ratchet can bring them back.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
very cool. And then if you play this within a different life gain strategy or something, and you could start bringing back 9 mana value things. Maybe you're an Aloro player or something, and you're going to put Ratchet in your Aloro deck, and you're going to run a Magistrate Scepter and a Core Tapper, where Magistrate Scepter is a 3 mana artifact with the important ability of tap, remove 3 charge counters from Magistrate Scepter to take an extra turn after this one. And Core Tapper
I love that.
is a 1/1 with 2 mana that you can sacrifice to put 2 charge counters on target artifacts. So you actually don't even have to swing with Ratchet in an Aloro deck, because at your upkeep you'll gain the amount of life that you need to bring Core Tapper right back. So now you don't even have to swing. No one needs blockers, and you could potentially take just about infinite turns.
All right, next is a mono blue transformer, and you might hear them outside because there is in fact construction happening at my house, and it is unknown whether or not that is going to appear on the audio.
Yeah, just like Bumblebee was hanging out. Stanley Witwicky, that was his name.
I don't know. I've seen
the first Transformers movie.
That's the only one I've seen in the year it came out, which I feel like was right after I got out of high school or something like that.
Yeah, probably.
So like too many years ago. So just pretend like we have robots just as background noise, like just doing generic things.
Well, yeah, you won't see them because they're in disguise.
Yeah. So Jetfire Ingenious Scientist is a 3/4 robot for 4 and a blue, so 5 mana. More than meets the eyes is 3 and a blue. It has flying and remove 1 or more +1/+1 counters from among artifacts you control. Target player adds that much colorless mana to their mana pool, and that mana cannot be spent to cast non-artifact spells. Then you convert Jetfire into Jetfire Air Guardian, which is just a jet. And it's a 3/4 jet that has flying. It has pay blue, convert Jetfire, and then adapt 3, which I did not expect to see the Simic mechanic adapt on one of these cards. So it's cool because this card actually works all on its own. I don't know how often you're going to be playing with +1/+1 counters and like artifacts that often, I guess. But I do like the idea of putting this into the 99 of like a Marchesa, the Black Rose deck, which is a deck that cares about dethrone. Dethrone says whenever this creature attacks the player with the most life or tied for the most, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. So you can remove counters from, maybe you're just running artifact creatures, because you have to remove them from among artifacts you control. So you want like artifact creatures. I don't know how often you're going to get more than one +1/+1 counter on them, because you want like modular, you want counters on things, and for at least Marchesa.
Yeah, I mean, with modular, you can stack more than one +1/+1 counters on each creature. So
and this adapts 3, so it gets multiple. So if you have Marchesa out, it says whenever a creature dies with a +1/+1 counter on it, you return to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. So like, I feel like this theme, I feel like it has legs. You know?
It definitely has legs, but only on one side of the card. In fact, with Jetfire, you can't even see Jetfire's legs on the first side of the card because it's sitting down in a chair.
Definitely has
so
legs.
I don't know if this one has legs at all. This one might be the only one that doesn't have legs.
Jetfire definitely, it has legs. Okay. It has legs, folks. Jetfire. Tell me if, you know what, we'll have to Google after just Jetfire Transformers to see if I can find one with legs.
Now I will say that in my research, I did find a commander that I think will use Jetfire very, very easily. And that is Katsumasa the Animator. This one is from Kamigawa Dynasty Commander. So this was one of the legendary creatures in the vehicles deck because it's blue. That's my only indication. So this is a Moonfolk Artificer for 2 blue. It's a 3/3 with flying that has an ability that says pay 2 and a blue. Until end of turn, target non-creature artifact you control becomes an artifact creature and gains flying. If it's not a vehicle, it has base power and toughness 1/1 until end of turn. But the ability we really care about here is at the beginning of your upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 3 target non-creature artifacts. So Jetfire doesn't care which artifacts have the +1/+1 counters on them, whether they're creatures or non-creatures. And Katsumasa is trying to turn non-creature artifacts into creatures. So you're gonna maybe at some point end up with a bunch of artifacts with +1/+1 counters on them that aren't creatures, so they're not doing anything. So why not turn those things into mana that you can spend only on artifact spells and activate abilities such as Katsumasa's ability, or activate the artifacts that you are undoubtedly casting in your Katsumasa deck.
It's a unique way to play it, and I don't think that Jetfire, among all these Transformers, is going to be among the most popular to play. But when you see it, it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, it is. Now, this next one is a mono black Transformer, so definitely I'm the one who's most interested in talking about this card.
But turns out
it's not.
He's
true.
not.
No,
he's not. Actually, I am now the mono black player of the show.
It's true.
You
100%.
guys,
I don't have a single deck.
You don't have a mono black deck
I don't
at all
have a
anymore?
Single mono black deck.
I have 2 Jaren decks and now Blitzwing, Cruel Tormentor, a 6/5 robot for 5 and a black, more than meets the eye for 3 and a black, so 2 less. At the beginning of your end step, target opponent loses life equal to the life that player lost this turn. If no life was lost this way, convert Blitzwing. On the other side, you have either a tank or just a generic ship. It looks like a ship from like Star Fox, honestly. That's that. If you picture a Star Fox ship, that's Blitzwing's on the space. And it says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose flying or indestructible at random. Blitzwing gains that ability till end of turn. When it deals damage to somebody, you convert Blitzwing. So this reminds me a lot of the card Wound Reflection. Not exactly, but that's an enchantment for 6 mana. It says at the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn. It also reminds me of the first commander that ever had this sort of text, which is Asterion the Decadent, a 4/4 vampire in the Orzhov colors. And there's a lot of text on it, but honestly, the one that matters is one of these modes that says at the beginning of your end step, you choose one. And I'm just going to read the one mode that says target opponent loses life equal to the amount of life they lost this turn. So we had talked about it off stream. And we had off stream and off podcast about this deck. And I said, I kind of want to build this. Is it a deck that would be fun? Is it a deck that could do the thing more than once? And honestly, sometimes just doing the thing two or three times and saying you've done it, and then your friends have the memory of it, and you're like, hey, I remember that was really cool, is the thing that I want to do. And so the thing is, this is like the most 2-card combo-y deck I've ever seen, because there are so many cards that say target opponent loses half their life, rounded up, and some say rounded down, so it would matter. But cards like Peer into the Abyss, Quietus Spike, Virtus the Veiled, Scourge of the Skyclaves, Fraying Omnipotence, Scytheclaw, Raving Dead, and there's more. There's like 10 or 11 mono black cards that just say you do something and then also lose half of your life, whether it's when you get attacked or when you draw half your library or whatever it is. And then Blitzwing at the end of turn will make them lose the other half of their life. So I feel like nobody's really talking about Blitzwing, but I did post it online, and there were some folks saying that this card and also when we talk about Megatron were some of their favorites. And I like to think maybe I had something to do with that opinion, because I was posting like Temporal Extortion. It's an extra turn card that costs 4 black mana, and it says you take an extra turn unless an opponent loses half their life. Well, that's fine. Either I get an extra turn or you essentially lose. You just lose the game, because I'm going to pick you then to lose that other half of the life. So it's a mono black. You get an extra turn. And that might be the only time Temporal Extortion becomes that, because in most cases, and you've only cast it against me maybe once or twice in our...
I used to cast it every game.
Yeah, but someone usually paid half their life.
Not true.
No?
No. Typically, people will not pay half their life, because when I'm casting Temporal Extortion, it's not going to be on turn 8 or 9. It's on curve 3 or 4, and people have 40.
Oh yeah, no one wants to lose 20, but at this point, they're definitely not going to want to lose half their life. So I think Blitzwing is sweet. I have a brew already. If you go check my Moxfield account, it's up there. If you were in our Discord, I added a bunch of cards that some people asked, because I found all the shell, and I was like, I have 6 cards, and I ran out of mono black cards that I think are good, because I'm honestly so not used to just building mono black.
It's good stuff.
But I'm running a Dark Ritual. I'm gonna get this robot out on turn 2.
Turn 2 on the vehicle side. Why not?
Let's go.
Well, speaking of mono black decks, I think this next one is a really, really good commander for your generic mono black commander decks out there. And that's Starscream, Power Hungry, the guy who was always trying to take Megatron's job.
And this one has legs in the artwork.
This one definitely has
You can
legs.
physically see the legs.
I can physically see the legs. I can even physically see Megatron's legs in the back of this one. I assume that's Megatron. Don't at me in the comments for that one. Starscream, Power Hungry. For 3 in a black, you get a 2/3 robot with more than meets the eye for 2 in a black. So cost 1 generic less. As flying. And whenever you draw a card, if you are the monarch, target opponent loses 2 life.
The monarch.
That's right. And whenever 1 or more creatures deal combat damage to you, convert Starscream. So there's still no indication of how the Monarch's being introduced. Maybe we'll find it on the other side of this card. You get a 2/3 vehicle with living metal, with flying, menace, and haste. This thing is coming in and getting in the turn it comes out.
This jet is coming at you with purple flames.
It's very hot. Whenever Starscream deals combat damage to a player, if there is no Monarch, that player becomes the Monarch. So very Jared Carthalion from Commander Legends. Who, when it entered the battlefield, you had to choose an opponent to become the Monarch. But whenever you become the Monarch, you get to convert Starscream. So mono black, introduce the Monarch. But other than that, it's all about you drawing cards while you're the Monarch.
And you're in mono black, which draws cards pretty well.
It does.
You don't mind paying life. Honestly, this transformer adding the Monarch is like the benefit here.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when we used to do the episodes? Well, not used to do. When we did the episodes on like house rules.
Yes.
A lot of the house rules that we talked about had Monarch being introduced in some way. And there were a lot that when we were doing the research of folks that had house rules posted online, a lot of them were just the goal of whatever the rule was making the Monarch exist.
That's true.
And I just like the Monarch. It's a really good mechanic.
It is.
I think it's a fan favorite. And so just adding it to the game is fantastic. I
like having to give it to someone else. I like that extra hoop of you give it to someone and then maybe next time around you'll be able to get it back.
Yeah, and there's only three legendary creatures that care about Monarch, which now is Starscream. You mentioned Jared Carthalion, and the original is Queen Marchesa, which is in Mardu. And this is really good for Queen Marchesa because Queen Marchesa just makes you the Monarch, so you can already just care about being the Monarch and then drawing cards. But I kind of really like the idea of putting this in like a Shieldred, new Shieldred deck, because that one already just cares about you just drawing in general because you gain life. When your opponents draw cards, they lose life. But I feel like the right shell is Queen Marchesa. I mean, because you got red for wheels, and if you're already looking to be the Monarch when you draw 7 cards, it's just really good. But if you wanted to add this to any black deck to add the Monarch, you get style points.
Yeah, I wanted to look up how many other Monarch cards you could play in mono black just to see if like there is a way to do it. With Starscream, there are 9 legal cards you can play.
That's actually not too bad.
It's not too bad. 2 of them are colorless. 1 of them is a land. But you have like Thorn of the Black Rose, which is a pauper staple. Brand new Court of Ambition, brand new Commander Legends. How many years ago was that?
Oh my god, it's been like 2 years, Mike. Brand spanking new from
latest,
2020.
I mean, other than Starscream, it is the latest Commander.
Or 2019. Oh god, I don't know what year it was.
It was a long time. But Court of Ambition, which makes people discard cards, extra benefits if you're the Monarch. Feast of Secession, which gives -4/-4 to all creatures, gives you the Monarch. Custody Lich is a good one that like does a flesh bag marauder effect when you become the Monarch. So black is definitely supported there. Not like 20 cards supported, but definitely mono black, good stuff. Add some Monarch.
I wouldn't be surprised if we just see it more. Oh, people just already like it. So in the future,
I'll play it.
You'll play it?
I'll play it.
You're gonna put together
I'll see if I open to Starscream. I don't even know if I open one or not.
All right. We're building both the mono black vehicles.
It's about time I had a mono black deck.
Exactly. So the next card here, though, let's go to red, which is Slicer, Hired Muscle. A 3/4 robot for 4 in a red. More than meets the eyes, 2 in a red. 2 less. Double strike and haste. It has legs. And at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you may have that player gain control of Slicer until end of turn. If you do, untap Slicer and you goad it. It can't be sacrificed. And if you do not do that, though, you have to convert it into... I don't know what kind of a vehicle this is. It's like a racing car of some. It looks like a Dodge Charger.
It almost to me looks like a European branded sports car. Like they kind of have a little bit of a bigger grill and they kind of look sedan-ish, but they're also super fast.
Okay, so Slicer High Speed Antagonist is just a high speed sedan.
Yeah.
And it has a yellow and a blue stripe down its side. But it has First Strike and Haste. It's a 3/2 with whenever it deals damage to a player, you convert it. So because you're giving this away, this really reminded me of the card Tangarth, First Mate, which came out in Commander 2019, a 5/5 Minotaur in Gruul colors that says whenever an opponent attacks with one or more creatures, if Tangarth is tapped, you can have it like attack with them, and you choose what it attacks. So it's not the same because they don't really get control. You're just like, you may have them gain control of it, and it says if you do, choose a player or planeswalker that opponent is attacking it attacks that. So you choose where it's attacking, but it's still kind of the same thing. So my thought here was, if you did want this to be your commander, you could just add on a bunch of swords or equipment, and then you're like, hey Mike, take this and smack this person because I'm already trying to get commander damage on that person. It's goaded, so you can't swing it at me anyway.
Right, but I'm going to purposefully choose the other person that you told me not to swing at.
But kindly though, help me get to 21 commander damage because it's very difficult to do.
That's true.
I think commander damage, Voltron decks kill one person and then lose to they take second place usually. When I play them, because I feel bad.
I don't think you're alone.
No, I just feel that's like, don't swing at me. It's like, okay, and then I spread it, and then it dies, and then I don't do anything else. That's what this reminds me of. I'm not sure what else I have to say about Slicer other than it reminds me of Tangarth, but could be a cool Voltron.
Yeah, I think you hit it nail on the head. Tangarth, you get a lot more choice. For Slicer, if you don't want to give it directly to the player on the left, you're not going to have the opportunity to give it to the player. The opportunity to give it to the player across from you or to the player on the right, because it'll already be on the vehicle side. But I kind of like it. I definitely wouldn't run it as a commander, but I think in the 99 it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, agreed.
We have like probably the best transformer on this whole list coming up here next. Andy's favorite.
Do we know?
RC Sharpshooter. RC Sharpshooter is a 3 mana, 1, a red and a white, 2/2 robot with more than BCI for red and a white. It's only 2 mana on the vehicle side. It's totally worth it.
Just Boros.
It's got First Strike, and it has an ability that you can pay 1 generic mana to remove 1 or more +1/+1 counters from RC. It deals that much damage to target creature, and then you convert RC over into the Barbie princess convertible.
It's a
Lamborghini.
coupe. It's a coupe, and it's an acrobatic coupe. It literally says what it is. This one vehicle explains what it is.
Okay, it is a coupe that does acrobatics.
It's shooting off of what looks like a taxi.
Yeah. So this is a 2/2 vehicle with living metal. It says whenever you cast a spell that targets 1 or more creatures or vehicles you control, put that many +1/+1 counters on RC and you convert RC. So that cares about how many targets your spell has. So there is an ability called Strive that was printed a long time ago that allow you to pay an extra cost, whether that was mana cost, sometimes like tapping a creature or something, in order to target an additional target past the first target. Those particular spells would probably be good with RC. Do you like RC, Andy?
No,
I
don't. I like RC going into like a Feather deck.
Sure.
But Feather is one of those decks where if you've played Feather, you've played Feather. And that's not to disparage a player who likes playing that deck.
Sure.
The problem is you play the same card 5 times. Like that's just kind of what Feather does. And Feather plays Strive cards. It plays specifically single target things. A lot of heroic cards work really well in there, right? Because you target that creature, they get a counter or whatever. So it works with RC. It's kind of a slam dunk if you're playing a Feather deck. It works. The issue is if you want RC to be your commander, you need to essentially work against yourself on the robot side because now you're removing counters from RC. And I don't think you want to. But maybe it's not a Voltron deck, and maybe I'm missing the strategy someone will play if RC was their commander.
So if you give maybe some equipments to RC, give it lifelink so that damage will heal you, give it death touch so you can only ping one time and kill something and only remove a single +1/+1 counter, maybe that's where it wants to go and it wants you to focus. But every time you activate that ability once, it converts RC, and then you have to jump through the hoops to convert back.
So you can't remove because it's to target creature.
Right.
It doesn't say to target. So if you had like 10, you can't remove 10 and ping down a bunch of 1/1s. You're dealing 10 damage to one creature. And I think that's kind of the downside for me.
That being said, it would be pretty hard to get 10 targets unless you have some of the 3 spells that will actually target all of your creatures without having to pay any extra mana. So if you are playing an RC deck, Eerie Interlude, which flickers all of your creatures, it does target all of your up to all of your creatures. So exile any number of target creatures you control. Return those cards to the battlefield under your owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. That will be able to target all of your creatures. Semester's End is doing the exact same thing, except the creatures will enter with an additional +1/+1 counter. You can also target Planeswalkers, and they will enter with an additional loyalty counter if you are playing Planeswalkers. And there's a card called Scapegoat, which is only 1 white mana, an instant. As an additional cost, you have to sacrifice a creature, but then you can return any number of target creatures you control to their owner's hand. So this is not a flicker effect. This is returning to your hand. I hope you have the mana to start recasting all of your creatures, but if you really only need 1 giant RC to get it done, you can get it done.
Yeah. RC is not going into any of my decks, but the next one might be a commander. I think this one's pretty cool too, which is Blaster Combat DJ, a 3/3 for 5 mana. So 3 red-green. We're in Gruul with more than meets the eye of 1 in Gruul. So 3 mana. And it says other non-token artifact creatures and vehicles you control have modular 1. So they enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them. And when they die, you may move their +1/+1 counters to other target artifact creatures. And it says whenever you put 1 or more +1/+1 counters on Blaster, you convert it into a boombox. So this is not a vehicle. It doesn't have living metal, but it has modular 3, and it has pay X and tap it, move X +1/+1 counters from Blaster onto another target artifact. So this one doesn't say artifact creature, this is just artifact. It says that artifact gains haste until end of turn. If Blaster has no +1/+1 counters on it, you convert it. So modular 3, if you cast it on the boombox side, it comes in with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. I think this is I like modular. Yeah. I like things that give abilities to things that don't have abilities. It reminds me of the card from Dragon's Maze that gives scavenge to all creatures in your graveyard. It's the Golgari card, Varol's, the Scar Striped. This reminds me of that, but now modular. All the things have modular.
Right.
I think I like this with like Hardened Scales that puts extra counters on things, or running Invigorating Hot Spring as an enchantment.
I like that.
It enters with 4 +1/+1 counters on it, and it says modified creatures have haste. So modified +1/+1 counters in general would give your creatures haste, and then you can remove a counter and you can put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control, or with like the Ozolith, a card that I wish I could afford more of them because they're just getting really expensive now. The card's $20 for like the lowest. They're up to $27 now, but it's an artifact, just 1 generic mana, and says whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, so it can be exiled, dies, flickered, whatever. If it had counters on it, you put them on the Ozolith. And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, if this has counters on it, you may move them onto a creature. So you don't really lose all your counters.
Right.
So the modular creature can leave the battlefield with a counter on it. It can move its counters. It's just, there's so much you can do. And the Ozolith is crazy. I think this is one of the cooler Transformers on the list. So neat.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. Giving abilities to your other creatures is always going to be super powerful. It reminds me of the Master Chef background, which gives your commander it lets your commander enter with an additional +1/+1 counter, and if you control your commander, it allows your other creatures to enter with additional +1/+1 counter. So maybe there's some sort of persist combo you can run here, and persist is when the creature dies, you can have it enter the battlefield with an additional -1/-1 counter, which if it has modular and persist, it'll just enter without a counter. And then you can give it persist again, or if it has persist on it, and maybe there's
like something there. There's something,
but it has to be an artifact creature,
right?
So it's a little bit hard. I only found one creature where it works, and that's Lesser Manticore. This is a 2 mana, 2 generic mana, 2/2 Manticore from Modern Horizons, the original Modern Horizons. This is an additional cost to cast a spell, discard a card, pay 4 generic mana. Lesser Manticore deals 1 damage to target creature and has persist. Really, it's a 2 mana 2/2 that has persist. That's what you care about here. And you could probably, with some sack outlets, go infinite mana, infinite mill, and you're in Gruul. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Gruul's
neat.
Cool.
Gruul is cool, and it's also a neat boombox that looks like it can play tape recorder stuff. Like it can play cassette tapes.
Yeah.
And
because the Transformers was like 80s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 80s, 90s.
80s, 90s.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk about some Dimir over here with Cyclonus the Saboteur.
It has legs.
It does.
Oh, man, I've missed saying it has legs on the last few, but this one also has legs, folks.
I don't think you have missed a single one so far.
I don't think I said it on Combat DJ.
Oh, maybe not on Combat. That's true. That's true. Cyclonus the Saboteur for 2, a blue and a black. You get a 2/5 robot with more than meets the eye for 7. 5 blue and a black.
This one costs 3 extra to make the robot right away, or the vehicle.
That vehicle side better be really good. Spoiler, it's really good. This is a 2/5 with flyer. It says whenever Cyclonus deals combat damage to a player, it connives. Then if Cyclonus's power is 5 or greater, convert it. So you'll have to connive 3 times.
Yeah, connive is you can draw a card and discard a card, and if you discard a non-land card, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Yes. So it only connives once when you swing.
Right. Yeah. I know people are kind of used to the wording on Rafine, the scheming seer, because you get to connive X, where X is the number of attacking creatures you control. But if it just says connive, that means connive 1, unfortunately.
Right.
But either way, we're going to turn this thing into a 5/5 vehicle with living metal called Cyclonus Cybertronian Fighter.
A purple ship without purple flames.
And it doesn't have any exhaust.
It's not going very fast.
Well, to be fair, there's some really hot fire you can't see. It's clear. So
hot fire.
It could be like just jet fire, which would make sense. But it could also be falling. Who knows? This is a 5/5 flyer. It says whenever Cyclonus deals combat damage to a player, convert it. If you do, there is an additional beginning phase after this phase. So an additional beginning phase means that you get an untap, an upkeep, and a draw step.
Come on, Sphinx of the Second Sun.
Yeah, but in Dimir in the command zone.
Dimir command zone with some specific
on an
requirements
on one side of the card.
But it's happening. Sphinx of the Second Sun is a 6/6 Sphinx for 8 mana, and it has flying. And at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, you get an additional beginning main phase. It's pretty cool. And if you play with cards that care about one of those phases, like maybe Anawan the Rune Sage, my first ever commander, at the beginning of your upkeep, each player sacks a non-vampire creature. So if you're getting another untap upkeep draw, you're going to get this. Are you going to play a Dimir Vampires robot extra?
Yes.
No?
Yeah,
we are?
Maybe.
I don't think we are, but it's there.
I mean, if we have something that's like generating creature tokens at our upkeep, and that's kind of the theme we're going in, and we just kind of have generic creatures to sacrifice, I say let's sacrifice a zombie and a vampire at everyone's upkeep, because there's that enchantment that does that for zombies too. Why not? You can run it all. But also, I like Triskaidekaphile for this one, because I like specifically, I like cards that have upkeep triggers that allow you to win the game and then allow you to take that upkeep trigger in your second main phase rather than your first.
Sure.
So you can cast the card in your first main phase.
Sure.
And Triskaidekaphile fits that role. This is a card from Innistrad Midnight Hunt. For 1 and a blue, you get a 1/3 human wizard. It says you have no maximum hand size. And at the beginning of your upkeep, it doesn't say your first upkeep, just beginning of your upkeep. If you have exactly 13 cards in your hand, you win the game. You can pay 3 and a blue to draw a card. So as long as I know I'm going to deal damage and get that extra thing, I'm just going to meld my hand into 13 cards and hope I win.
It's a cool win con. I've never seen Triskaidekaphile played, period, since it's come out. I have never seen it myself.
I have it in one deck. And
have you won with it ever?
Sleeveless deck, which has not won yet.
Oh, it's not won yet. Well, maybe it will. Let's go to Rakdos here with Flame War Brash Veteran. So this is a 3/2 for 3 mana, 1 black-red, and it has more than meets the eye of black-red, so another 2 mana cost vehicle. It says sack another artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Flame War, and convert it, activate only as a sorcery, and then pay 1, discard your hand, put all exiled cards you own with intel counters on them into your hand. What's an intel counter, you say?
What's an intel counter, Andy?
Well, I'm going to flip it over because it's a counter named intel.
Oh, okay.
It turns over into a motorcycle, and it has Menace and Death Touch, and it's a 2/1, and it says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, combat damage. Didn't say just damage. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile that many cards from the top of your library face down. Put an intel counter on each of them and convert Flame War. So it reminds me of Prosper.
Yeah.
But like, it doesn't really cast the cards from exile. You're not really getting treasure. Maybe I'd put this in a Prosper deck. Some folks were talking about maybe this being a deck that could focus on World Gorger Dragon. It's not something that I think I'm interested in, but I did reach out to Mike Carosa from Commander's Herald, and I said, hey, you have a Lysolda deck, and Lysolda is a Rakdos commander that sacks creatures and stuff. I was like, does this work there? Is this like what you're looking to do? He did say no. He's like, not really, but it's cool, just not really for my deck. I don't have anywhere that I would fit this, and I'm not sure I'd want to build this as a commander. But it's neat having a black-red artifact commander. There aren't a ton of them.
There are not a ton of black-red artifact commanders out there. In fact, a majority of them come from the partner pairings from the original Commander Legends. The top 3, in fact, only 3 that you'll find if you go and search it on EDHREC is a Keskit Togo, Armix Togo, and then Grenzo Dungeon Warden that doesn't actually care about artifacts, cares about creatures, but I'm sure it's an artifact creature theme.
Modular artifact creature or something? That's cool. Yeah, something like that.
So this one, if you aspire to have a Rakdos artifacts deck, I think this is your answer. And don't overlook it, because this is it. This is Rakdos artifacts.
This is it.
You don't have any other choice other than partners, but and Grenzo. If you're the Grenzo player, shoot me your list. I want to see it. This next one, it might say robot, but it's going immediately into one of my tribal decks that's definitely not about artifacts or robots, and that is Goldbug, Humanity's Ally. Let's see if you can guess which deck it's going in. For 1, a white and a blue, you get a 3/3 robot with more than meets the eye for 2, just white and a blue, so that's our third 2 mana more than meets the eye. Pretty cool. It says prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking humans you control.
I love clauses like this just on cards.
It's amazing.
It's great.
I mean, if this was a human, it would be even better, but I understand it would be a little bit.
There's a human in this art. Not all of them have that.
A boy, a man, who knows? Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you are going to convert Goldbug into a 1/3 vehicle with living metal. It looks kind of like a Volkswagen Beetle there. It says human spells you control can't be countered. And whenever Goldbug and at least one human attack, draw a card and convert Goldbug. So before you get to the blockers and damage step, it's going to convert back into the robot side that is going to prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking humans you control. So Andy, what deck am I putting this in?
In your 5-color humans deck,
sure
which is more fun because it'll only cost you
It'll
cost you 1. It'll cost you 1
me
because it's reduced by the.
So it'll cost me the full amount because it's not a human.
Oh,
and it
shoot.
only reduces.
Yeah, this truly does cost you 3.
But 3
shoot, you
mana
gotta
is-
pay 3.
3 mana is totally acceptable to pay for a creature in my Morophon deck, and I'll probably try to get it out on 3 before I even get
We also
Morophon
looked
out.
this up, and Goldbug apparently is Bumblebee, but Bumblebee
Yes.
changes its form later in life, because in the Gen 1 era, to become like a more mature version, like responsible mature version of it. I don't really have a deck for this card. I feel like you could run this in a cool like Glen Voice of Calm deck.
Oh, that's a good idea.
That's like, it's got Skulk, you can swing in, you're already playing with humans, but I feel like humans wants enter the battlefield abilities to happen, which is funny because if you look at ETB, blue-white commanders, Brago and Grand Arbiter are the top 2 human commanders on EDHREC. Right, and we apologize for seeing, like we had to see that, so you didn't have to see it.
We had to apologize to our own eyes for having to gaze upon those commanders.
Yeah, like I'm sorry, but I mean I run Brago and Grand Arbiter in a deck, so I'm sorry. I'm also sorry for that.
Okay.
But I feel like there's a home for this. I just don't have a spot for it, but I like it a lot.
It's good stuff.
It doesn't work in Niambi, although it's legendary. I don't care really about humans. I'm just caring about cool legendaries.
You don't attack much in that deck either, right? It's more about ETBs and LTBs. And
I mean, I do have to swing to win in that deck, except for if I can get the Approach of the Second Sun win off. I do swing, but they're like big. I guess you have a lot of like legendary sphinxes that are swinging in the air and stuff. So you have evasion for it. Maybe that's why I'm not thinking of like. Yeah. I don't know if I block much against Andy. I don't. Yeah.
I don't block much.
So moving to our first 3-color transforming here is Megatron Tyrant. This is Mardu color, so 3 red, white, black. More than meets the eyes of 1 red, white, black. And it says your opponents can't cast spells during your combat, which is wonderful, or during combat period. And at the beginning of your post main phase, oh my gosh, at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, see, I can read, you may convert Megatron. If you do, you add colorless for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. And then it becomes a tank that shoots like purple lasers. Yes. Okay. And it says, whenever Megatron attacks, you may sacrifice another artifact. When you do, Megatron deals damage equal to that artifact's mana value to target creature. And then if excess damage would be dealt to that creature, you would convert Megatron, and you deal that much damage to that excess amount to the creature's controller. So this one's cool. 3 colors. You could play this in like a Mardu Aristocrats deck. The problem I'm running into is the fact that I'm probably going to run some low mana value artifacts, and if I can't deal excess damage, I'm banking on the fact that my opponents have low toughness creatures, and if they don't, maybe an Aristocrat style works, because then you can hit your own creature to flip it back. I'm not sure. I feel like hold on, this one, the theme has legs, but also legs. Megatron has legs.
Megatron also has legs, and so does Starscream in the background of Megatron. I like the way that you're thinking. I think that idea does work. You are going to hit yourself though. So you're going to deal damage to yourself.
But because you're doing Aristocrats, you might hopefully negate that life loss with stealing it from your opponents.
Yeah, but I mean, with one ability, you get to sacrifice an artifact and kill one of your creatures. So consider it sacrifice an artifact and sacrifice a creature, and you have to pay a life to do it. It's just a black sorcery. That's all we just explained.
Yeah.
So you're there, and on the robot side, I do think that Morophon does feel a lot like Neheb the Eternal. It's a 5-mana mono red zombie Minotaur warrior that adds red to your mana pool in your second main phase, equal to the amount of life your opponents lost this turn. But Megatron has that extra ability of your opponents can't cast spells during combat, and I don't know if you've ever played in the Heb deck. People just remove it in response to you attacking them, so you won't get the mana. Megatron, you will. It is colorless, but again, in those mono red and the Heb decks, you only really need like 2 or 3 red, and then the rest can be colorless, no problem. You're in Mardu, you're gonna have access to black and white. That's huge upside for deck building potential. I like it. I don't know if I love it, but I like it.
Do you want some more of it?
I like it. I love it. I want some more of it. We could talk about the leader of the Autobots this time, though.
Oh, is that Optimus Prime?
It's Optimus Prime.
Tell me about Optimus Prime.
Hero. Optimus Prime Hero. For 6 mana, you get a 3 blue. For 3 blue, red, white, you get a 4/8 robot with more than meets the eye for 5. So 1 generic class, 2 blue, red, white. This is the beginning of each end step. You bolster 1. And bolstering means you get to choose a creature with the least toughness among creatures you control and put a +1/+1 counter on it. When Optimus Prime dies, you return it to the battlefield converted under its owner's control. So that's how we're going to get the vehicle side.
This is the only one that has a dies clause and return as a vehicle. It dies and is like, I'm a semi.
Yeah, he was a martyr, but now he's a semi truck. I feel like I've seen some copy pasta online about something like that. Optimus Prime Autobot Leader is the semi-truck side. It's a 6/8 vehicle, living metal, and trample. It says whenever you attack, bolster 2. The chosen creature gains trample until end of turn, and when that creature deals combat damage to a player this turn, convert Optimus Prime. So since the robot side triggers at end step to bolster 1, and the vehicle side triggers as you attack to bolster 2, you can technically bolster 3 on every single one of your turns that you have this Optimus Prime out. It's pretty cool stuff.
And so this is the 3rd legendary creature that has bolster. So first we had Anafenza Kintry Spirit and Dramoka the Eternal from before this, back in the Khans of Tarkir block, which, by the way, was in 2015. It has been 7 years since Khans of Tarkir. And I feel like this is a deck where I could convert like Nakara and Yannick that I used to play, which was Abzan, right? Because the bolster was in mono white with Anafenza or green white with Dramoka, but there were cards that can move things around. So I feel like just generic counters, you can move things around pretty easily. I've seen Dramoka the Eternal bolster happen just in generic dragon decks because Dramoka cares about bolstering when dragons attack. I feel like there's something here. It's pretty cool. It's also, I think, the biggest vehicle. It might be.
It's got the biggest toughness.
It's got the biggest toughness, but it's a 6/8 on one side and a 4/8 on the other. And it's in Jeskai, which is cool because you probably have a lot more options of things to do, maybe with counters in different colors that aren't just Abzan.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a way to like assign combat damage equal to toughness rather than power in the Jeskai colors. It's typically a green thing, but I feel like there's a white assault formation. That's green. I feel like that's green.
No, that's white.
That's white. Okay.
Is that the one that has, if you cast it during your main phase, your creatures gain indestructible and you put a +1/+1 counter on them, but also they give vigilance or something?
Assault formation. I think I know what you're talking about. Assault formation is the 2 mana green enchantment that has each creature you control sign combat damage equal to stuff.
The card I'm thinking of, I think, is from one of the Ravnica sets.
I know exactly.
I can't remember.
Yeah, because it's an instant if you cast it during your main phase. So yeah, it's definitely.
It has addendum. That's what that is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Soundwave, Sonic Spy. This is an Esper robot for 1 white, blue black.
Yes.
And it has more than meets the eye of 2 white, blue, black. It says whenever one or more creature tokens you control deals damage to a player, exile target instant or sorcery from their graveyard with mana value equal to the damage dealt to them. You get to copy it and you can cast the copy without paying its mana cost. And if you do, you convert Soundwave into, which I believe is a tape recorder. This does not look like a boombox to me. I think
it's a boombox.
I do. We have talked about this before the show. This is definitely a tape recorder.
It almost looks like a walkie-talkie receptor too, like the 2 things on the side.
It's a Nokia phone, and it has the.
So it's indestructible.
You can swim underwater. You can climb Mount Everest. You can throw it at a wall. It won't break. But this is another robot that turns into a legendary artifact. So it's not a creature, and it has two paragraphs.
It does.
They are a lot of text that really care about odd mana value and even mana value cards. So maybe you pick one or the other. Maybe you do both. But whenever you cast a spell with an odd mana value, you convert Soundwave. And if you do, you make a 3/3 black robot artifact creature token named Ravage with Menace and Death Touch. And if you cast a spell with an even mana value, you convert Soundwave. And if you do, you make Laserbeak, a legendary 2/2 blue robot artifact creature token with flying and hexproof. And I will say that if you were a Power Rangers kid, Laserbeak definitely looks like the Pink Ranger's pterodactyl that flies on and attaches to the Megazord's chest.
Definitely.
That's what Laserbeak is. It's just like chilling though, very small on like a basketball hoop.
Yeah, so those I believe are like mini bots from the Transformers series, and they actually transform out of cassette shapes. And so like the cassettes will go into Soundwave and into the one Autobot and like power them up, but they could have them out and go like scout, like Soundwave, go scout, and it'll fly off and stuff. And
this is cool. Now I think this one's tough because
extremely tough.
Yeah, you want some mill because you have to ensure one to start. You need an opponent to have instants and sorceries in their graveyard.
Yeah,
and if they're not casting them or they're playing a deck like Nikia of the old ways where I run one, Soundwave's not gonna do a whole lot against my deck.
I'm gonna not pay attention to you.
Yeah, you're like, okay, Andy, play your game.
I'll have to kill you eventually. But that's it.
But I don't care about anything else you're doing because it's not going to help me. So you have to get stuff there. So maybe you throw in some incremental mill. You have like Alter the Brood. I mean, that's kind of a really good one. But you're in blue, so you can add like Teferi's Tutelage and some other cards that'll mill things. But you pointed out that you specifically have to deal the exact amount of damage equal to the mana value of that spell. It's not or less than. It's the exact amount. So if I want to cast a mana value 3 card and I swing at you with 4 creatures, you can block 1 and deal 3, or you could just go, well, I guess I'll take 4 and you're not going to get any of the spells from my graveyard.
Yeah.
That's a lot of brain power and opponent graveyard management.
Yes. And it doesn't necessarily get you there with just this card too. Like you are creating 2/2s and creating 3/3s on the opposite side, but one at a time. You're not creating.
You don't get both.
2/2s.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't say anything on the back of the side whether or not 0 mana value spells are even. I assume that they are.
I would assume it fits the rest of the rules, which is 0 is even.
Yeah, but in math rules, 0 is not even. But anyway, Soundwave's cool.
No one gets anything that's even and fair.
It's true. Well, it's not even though. That's the thing.
No one needs to know.
So Esper tokens. I think this as a commander would be a very hard build around, but very, very interesting. I love your Alter of the Brood comment. 1 power and 2 power creatures are the most efficient way you can get to any number. You could do all 1s, but 1 and 2 is technically the most efficient. So you can
play like Secure the Waste, which I believe is just on an instant speed to make a bunch of 1. I mean, there's lots of ways to make a bunch of tokens, and maybe it is Esper tokens. But again, you have to rely on your opponents, and I'm not sure I'd play Soundwave, but it's a unique strategy.
It's very cool. I like it, and I think this next one though is also it is an extremely unique.
This
strategy.
One is crazy,
extremely unique for this color combination. We have Ultra Magnus Tactician. So for 4, a red, a green, and a white, you get a 7/7 robot, has more than meets the eye for 2, a red, a green, a white. So 2 generic mana less. It has Ward 2, and whenever Ultra Magnus attacks, you may put an artifact creature from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. If you do, convert Ultra Magnus at end of combat. So this is a Naya creature that cares about getting artifact creatures from your hand onto the battlefield. Not typically the color combination I would think. But on the vehicle side, we have a 4/6 living metal with haste. This one's called Armored Carrier. It's a big semi-truck itself. And it has Formidable. Whenever Ultra Magnus attacks, attacking creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. If those creatures have total power 8 or greater, convert Ultra Magnus. So you can technically get this out on turn 5 with haste, swing, and convert it over to the robot side. But you're still not doing anything with it until turn 6, probably. Unless you can cheat it out for the 7 mana, give it haste right away. But really, it's the robot side we care about. And we're caring about putting artifact creatures onto the battlefield. But if you're already investing so much time and mana into your commander, you want the creatures you're going to put down to probably be higher mana value or higher impact than Ultra Magnus itself. So you're probably going to play things like Blightsteel Colossus because it's an 11/11 indestructible infect.
Gotcha.
And you're going to die. And the thing is, in a lot of these other like mono red cheat out decks, like the Perforos from Theros Beyond Death, or just like Sneak Attack and those kinds of things, Ilharg from War of the Spark, those creatures are either going to get sacrificed or returned to your hand at the end of combat or end of turn. And with Ultra Magnus, they just stay out. So that is a really big.
You're also in 3 colors, which is cool because you do get white, green, and red. So here was my thought when I looked at this. I wasn't sure if this one had legs.
It has legs.
Does. Is Zalortha Strength Incarnate like taking a potential shell from that deck as like the lead up to the rest of the Blightsteel Colossus strat? Because Zalortha is a 7/3 trample dinosaur in Gruul. So at least if it's the colors here, and it says lethal damage dealt to creatures you control is determined by their power rather than their toughness. That might not necessarily be important, but I like the idea of playing a bunch of creatures that have high power and really terrible toughness, because you can get like 4/1s or 5/1s and even 6/1s or 6/2s for a lower mana value.
For sure.
And then Ultra Magnus on the side of like the armored, the transport semi, it says whenever it attacks, attacking creatures you control gain indestructible till end of turn, as long as you have creatures with power 8 or greater. And if you weren't with like the cards that are played in a Zalortha deck, you're going to hit 8 power immediately. I mean, you're probably never not going to have it in that build. And then just have a couple of good artifacts and ways to grab. I mean, Light and Tutor can grab artifacts and enchantments. I mean, you can get some things. I don't know if I'm in love with that.
Sure.
But it would work.
Yeah, I guess in red, I didn't even think about it before. In red, like even if you get your Blightsteel Colossus out early and someone somehow sends it to the graveyard without exiling it, you'll be able to use like Goblin Engineer type of things to swap your artifacts from your graveyard to the battlefield and vice versa. So I guess you won't even lose your high mana value artifacts if they do get removed. But on top of that, you don't necessarily have to play with huge artifact creatures. But if you are going to take advantage of that ability, you should take advantage of it at least twice per time you're doing it. So Stronic Resonator, double your attack
double
trigger
that.
or something. Anything like that to double, triple, quadruple your triggers obviously will get better and better.
This one, I think there was discussion in our Discord, and I've seen some online where it's like, I want to play Ultra Magnus, but I can't figure it out. Like it's not there yet. It will be. Someone will figure it out, and it'll be great.
It got printed in the right set. Brothers War is bringing out a ton of huge artifact creatures, and this is probably the right time to build it. Yeah.
All right. So pick your top 2 and your bottom. What would you say? I really like the Blaster Combat DJ, and I'm a big fan of Blitzwing, the mono black combo. I gotta say though, I don't even think RC is my least favorite. I think it's Prowl.
Okay.
I don't like the having to attack and just like exiling something, and then sure there's card draw on it. I saw it. It's not the way I want to do it though. Not a fan. No. I don't want to recast my creatures because I'm probably going to want something with ETB as well, the way that my brain would work.
Sure.
And I don't want to just exile your card, although it can set somebody back, but the requirement to swing, and also it's too much.
It's a lot.
Not a fan.
I think I like Soundwave because of the challenge behind the deck building, and I really like deck building challenges and stuff, and I like Esper, so that works out well. But I think Starscream probably just mono black good stuff.
Mono black, adding the Monarch.
But for my least favorite, I do sorry to all you Rakdos artifact players out there, but I'm not big into Rakdos artifacts. So I'm gonna say Flame War because I think that's kind of the only way to make that commander work, and it's the only deck it would really fit in. So because it's not a very well supported theme or a theme I'm too excited about. That's why I wouldn't pick Flame War.
Nice.
Well supported might not be the right word. I take that back.
There's a lot. It's just not maybe for what
Right.
we want to do with a commander in
Rakdos
Artifacts.
sacrifice
Sure.
using artifacts is like big and standard right now, or was big and standard. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's it for this week. We hope you enjoyed not having to read all of those cards on your own.
That's true.
It's easier when I like books by tape. Sometimes
It's nice.
That's when I listen to the War of the Spark novels, which
I did the
are not
same.
highly regarded, but I did listen to them.
It's just like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and stuff. Like, even if it's not good content, I want to absorb it so I know the storyline.
Just want content.
I do.
Yeah. So we want to know which Transformer is your favorite, and if you're building one, let us know. And if you are putting it into the 99, also just let us know. We kind of want to know. If you want to chat with us some more, you can find us in Discord, and for as long as Twitter exists, you can find me there at Andy Flory.
And you can find me there at Wormcoil Engine. And of course, just like every week, we will talk to you next time.